When I was 19, life was simpler, or so I thought. That year everything changed. It was the year I met them, Oliver and Braden, the two most captivating people I'd ever seen. They weren't just classmates, they were the kind of guys you read about in novels, the ones who make your heart race with just a glance. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Falling for one person is complicated enough, but two, they were so different, yet equally irresistible, and somehow they both saw something in me. It was the beginning of a story I'll never forget, a story that shaped the man I am today. Get ready for an unforgettable journey of love, self-discovery, and impossible choices. As I take you through this chapter of my life, I'll share moments of laughter, heartbreak, and passion that changed everything. By the end, you'll see how love isn't always simple, but it's always worth it. When I was 19, the world felt full of possibilities and terrifying uncertainty. College had just started, and everything seemed bigger. Bigger campus, bigger dreams, bigger expectations, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the moment I met Oliver and Braden. Oliver was the kind of guy who seemed untouchable, almost like he existed in another universe. He had sandy blonde hair that always fell just right, framing a face so perfectly chiseled it looked like it belonged in a museum. His piercing blue eyes seemed to hold secrets he didn't let anyone else in on. He was confident in a way that made you want to be near him, but also made you question if you ever really could. Then there was Braden, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, and a smile that could stop traffic. He was the kind of guy who made you feel seen, really seen. His laugh was contagious, warm, and it lit up whatever room he was in. Where Oliver was bold and striking, Braden was steady and comforting. They were opposites in so many ways, yet equally magnetic. I first noticed them in the dining hall. It was one of those chaotic first week evenings where everyone was still figuring out where they belonged. I was sitting at a corner table, pretending to be busy with my phone, when I saw them walk in together. Oliver was laughing at something Braden said, his head tilted back just enough to show off that perfect jawline. Braden was carrying two trays, a playful grin on his face, as if he were teasing Oliver about something. They were beautiful, intimidatingly beautiful. I must have been staring too long, because Braden's eyes met mine for a moment. I panicked, quickly looking down at my untouched food. When I glanced back up, he was still looking at me, his smile softening into something almost curious. I felt my heart race in a way it never had before. Later that week, fate or sheer dumb luck brought us together. I had signed up for a campus tour to get to know the area better, and there they were again. Oliver stood near the front, his hands casually stuffed in his jacket pockets, while Braden leaned against a railing, scrolling through his phone. I was trying to stay inconspicuous, but apparently the universe had other plans. Hey, Braden said, stepping beside me as the tour guide started explaining something about the library. I think I saw you in the dining hall the other night. His voice was low, calm, and friendly. My stomach flipped as I struggled to form from a coherent sentence. Yeah, probably. It was crowded, right? He chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that made you feel both embarrassed and charmed at the same time. Yeah, it was. I'm Braden, by the way, and that's Oliver. He gestured toward his friend, who was now watching us with an unreadable expression. I began, clearing my throat. I'm Alex. Nice to meet you, Alex, Braden said, his smile genuine. We should all grab coffee sometime, right, Oliver? Oliver didn't respond right away, his gaze fixed on me as if trying to figure something out. Finally, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Sure, he said, his voice deeper than I expected. Why not? That was the moment my life shifted. One casual invitation turned into the beginning of something I couldn't have anticipated. I didn't know then that Oliver and Braden would soon become the center of my world, pulling me into their orbit with a force I couldn't resist. But even in that first moment, I felt the tension, the unspoken connection between the three of us, and I couldn't help but wonder, was I stepping into something that could only end in heartbreak, or was this the start of something extraordinary? As the tour ended and it didn't take long for Oliver and Braden to become a regular part of my Life one coffee outing turned into study. Sessions which turned into late night. Conversations that stretched until dawn. Being with them felt natural yet exhilarating. They were like fire and water, opposites that somehow balanced each other and me. Perfectly. Braden was the first to reach out after the campus tour, true to his word. He texted me later that evening, "Hey, Alex, it's Braden coffee tomorrow." Oliver's in too. The butterflies in my stomach were instant and relentless. It wasn't just that they wanted to hang out. It was the way Braden made it sound so easy, like I already belonged in their world. The next day we met at a small cafe just off campus. Braden was already there when I arrived, sipping on a Nick coffee. His smile was as warm as ever, and for the first time I noticed a little dimple on his left cheek. "Alex," he said, waving me over, "hope you like caffeine, because Oliver's been hyping this place up like it's heaven on earth." Before I could respond, Oliver appeared from behind holding a steaming cup of black coffee. "It's not hype if it's true," he said, handing me a menu. His voice was calm, confident, and unbothered, like he knew exactly who he was and didn't care what anyone else thought. That was the first time I noticed how different they were, not just in personality but in how they made me feel. Braden was easy to talk to, with a way of making everything seem lighter, simpler. Oliver, on the other hand, had an intensity about him that made my heart race, like being around him was both thrilling and terrifying. As the days turned into weeks, the three of us grew closer. It wasn't just coffee anymore, it was walks around campus, impromptu dinners, and nights spent lying on the grass staring at the stars. Each moment felt like it held the weight of something unspoken, some none of us dared to name. One night, after a particularly stressful day of classes, we ended up back at Braden's dorm. He and Oliver shared the space, which somehow suited them, to despite their differences. Braden's side was all organized chaos, with books and clothes scattered in a way that made sense only to him. Oliver's side, in contrast, was almost military in its neatness. "Alex, you've got to see this," Braden said, pulling out an old guitar from under his bed. "I'm terrible, but Oliver's pretty good." Oliver groaned from his desk. "Don't drag me into this." "Oh, come on," Braden insisted, handing him the guitar. "You'll make me look bad, but at least Alex will be impressed." I laughed nervously as Oliver took the guitar. He hesitated for a moment before strumming a few chords. His fingers moved effortlessly, and the sound filled the room, warm and inviting. As he played, his eyes met mine, and for a second it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. Braden, oblivious to the tension, started singing along in a voice that was slightly off-key but charming nonetheless. By the time they finished, all three of us were laughing, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known I was missing. But as the night went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. It wasn't just the way Oliver's gaze lingered on me a little longer than usual, or how Braden's playful touches seemed more deliberate. It was the unspoken question hanging between us. What was this friendship? Something more. As I left their dorm that night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Braden. "You're pretty great, Alex. Just thought you should know." Before I could process it, another text came through, this time from Oliver. "Tonight was fun. Let's do it again soon." I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Two messages, two completely different tones, but both filled with the kind of promise that kept me awake long after I got home. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew one thing for sure: I was falling for both of them. The more time I spent with Oliver and Braden, the harder it became to untangle my feelings. They both made me feel alive in ways I didn't fully understand. With Braden, it was like floating on a calm lake, easy, steady, and full of light. With Oliver, it was a storm, intense, unpredictable, and utterly consuming. One crisp autumn evening, we decided to take a walk through the park near campus. The air smelled like fallen leaves, and the fading sunlight cast everything in a warm golden glow. Braden led the way, kicking at a pile of leaves. With a carefree grin, Oliver walked beside me, his hands shoved into the pockets of his leather jacket, his presence commanding even in silence. "You're quiet tonight," Oliver said, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "Just thinking," I replied, not daring to meet his gaze. "Careful with that," he said, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Too much Thinking can drive you crazy. I smiled, but before I could respond, Braden called out from ahead. Guys, check this out. He had found a small wooden bridge overlooking a creek. The waters sparkled under the fading sunlight, and Braden leaned against the railing looking out over the scene. Pretty, huh? He said as we joined him. As I agreed, though my eyes weren't on the creek, they were on him. Braden caught my gaze and smiled, his dimple appearing just enough to make my heart flutter. Oliver, noticing the moment, stepped closer to the railing, brushing against my arm as he did. The touch was brief but electric, sending a shiver down my spine. My stomach twisted in knots. Did he do that on purpose? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the park grew quieter. Braden suggested we head back, but Oliver hesitated. You guys go ahead, I'll catch up in a bit, he said, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. Need a moment? Braden gave him a teasing smile. You know those will kill you, right? Something's gotta, Oliver replied with a shrug. I hesitated, unsure if I should stay or go. Braden must have noticed my hesitation because he gave me a playful nudge. Go keep him company, I'll see you back at the dorm. Before I could protest, he was already walking away, leaving me alone with Oliver. The air between us felt heavier, now charged with an unspoken contention. You don't have to stay, Oliver said, lighting a cigarette and taking a slow drag. I don't mind, I replied, leaning against the railing beside him. We stood in silence for a while, the sound of the creek and the distant rustle of leaves filling the space between us. Finally, Oliver broke the silence. What's going on in that head of yours, Alex? I glanced at him, my heart pounding. His green eyes were soft now, searching mine as if he genuinely wanted to know. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I'm trying to figure everything out, but the more I try, the more confused I get. Oliver nodded, taking another drag before flicking the cigarette away. Life's messy like that, feelings especially. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I opened my mouth to say something and anything, but before I could, he turned to face me fully. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever feel like you're being pulled in two different directions at once? The question hit me like a freight train. Did he know? Could he see right through me? I nodded slowly, my throat dry. Yeah, I do. Oliver's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. It's exhausting, isn't it? Before I could respond, Braden's voice called out from the distance, you two coming or what? Oliver stepped back, his expression guarded once again. Looks like our moment's over, he said with a hint of a smirk. As we walked back to the dorm, I couldn't shake the feeling that Oliver had seen a part of me I wasn't ready to share, and Braden's sweet, unassuming Braden was waiting for us with that same carefree smile that made my heart ache. I was caught between two forces, each pulling me in opposite directions, and the worst part, I didn't want to let go of either. The dynamic between Oliver, Braden, and me was becoming impossible to ignore. Every glance, every touch, every word seemed to carry a weight that none of us were willing to address. I was trying to navigate a tight RPP between two people I cared about deeply, but the truth was the rope was fraying, and fast. It all came to a head during a campus bonfire, an annual tradition meant to bring students together. The fire crackled in the center of a large clearing, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and the hum of laughter. I had come with Oliver and Braden, but as the night wore on, it felt like the three of us were orbiting different worlds. Braden was in his element, laughing and joking with a group of friends near the fire. His smile was infectious, and I couldn't help but watch him. The way the flames reflected in his dark eyes, the way he seemed so effortlessly himself. Oliver, on the other hand, was more subdued, standing a little apart from the crowd with a drink in hand. He caught me looking at him and raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into that familiar smirk that made my heart race. He nodded his head toward the trees silently. After asking me to follow, I hesitated, glancing back at Braden, who was now telling some animated story to a group of enraptured listeners. He looked so happy, so carefree, and for a moment I hated myself for what I was about to do, but the pull toward Oliver was too strong to resist. I found him leaning against a tree at the edge of the clearing, the bonfire's glow barely reaching us. Needed some air, he said, his voice low and calm. It's too loud over there. Yeah, I Replied, though the truth was I hadn't noticed the noise until now. My heart was pounding too loudly in my ears to register much else. He looked at me for a long moment, the smirk fading into something more serious. You know, Alex, I've been trying to figure you out. What do you mean? Scared, though I wasn't sure. I wanted the answer. You're different, he said, his green eyes searching mine. You don't play games like everyone else, you're just you, and it drives me crazy. My breath caught for a moment. I forgot how to speak, how to think. Oliver, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said, stepping closer. His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. I just needed you to know. He reached out, his fingers brushing against mine, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. My heart was screaming at me to move, to say something, to do anything, but before I could, a voice cut through the moment like a knife. Alex Braden's voice was soft, almost uncertain, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. He stood a few feet away, his hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket, his expression unreadable. The tension was suffocating. As the three of us stood there, the unspoken truth finally laid bare. Braden's gaze flickered between Oliver and me, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that wasn't warmth, it was hurt. I didn't mean to interrupt, Braden said, his voice tight. He turned and walked away before I could say anything, leaving me and Oliver in stunned silence. I looked at Oliver, whose jaw was clenched, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. You should go after him, he said, quietly, stepping back into the shadows. For a moment I was frozen, torn between the two people who meant everything to me. Finally I turned and ran after Braden, my chest tight with guilt and confusion. I found him near the bonfire, his back to me as he stared into the flames. Braden, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't turn around. So, is this how it is, Alex? Am I just a backup plan? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. No, Braden, it's not like that. I don't know what I'm doing. I care about you. I care about both of you. He turned, then his dark eyes filled with pain. That's the problem, Alex. You can't have both. Before I could respond, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, the weight of my choices pressing down on me like never before. The days after the bonfire were the hardest I'd ever experienced. Braden was avoiding me, his once warm texts now replaced by silence. Oliver wasn't much better. He had retreated into his own world, his usual smirks and teasing remarks replaced by an icy distance. I felt like I was caught in the eye of a storm, unsure which way to turn or how to make things right. One evening, after hours of wrestling with my thoughts, I found myself outside Braden's door. I hesitated for what felt like forever before finally knocking. The door opened a moment later, and there he was, his expression cautious but not unkind. Hey, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Hey, he replied, stepping aside to let me in. The room was quieter than usual, the air heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I need to talk to you, I began, sitting on the edge of bed while he leaned against his desk. About everything. Braden crossed his arms, his eyes locking onto mine. I'm listening. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. I've been selfish, Braden. I thought I could keep everything balanced, but I've only hurt you, both of you, and I hate myself for it. His expression softened slightly, but he didn't speak, waiting for me to continue. I care about you, I said, my voice cracking, more than I've ever cared about anyone. You make me feel safe, understood, and loved. But Oliver, don't, Braden interrupted, his voice firm but not angry. I don't want to hear about him right now. I want to hear about us. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. I don't want to lose you, Braden. I don't know what I'd do if I did. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Alex, I care about you too, but this, whatever this is between the three of us, it's not fair to anyone. You have to decide, Alex, not just for me or for Oliver, but for yourself. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I couldn't keep pretending that this was sustainable. I had to face my feelings, no matter how terrifying it was. Later that night, I found myself standing outside Oliver's dorm. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear soft music playing inside. I knocked hesitantly, pushing the door open. When he called for me to come in, he was sitting on his bed, a guitar in his hands. When he saw me, he set it aside, his eyes narrowing. Slightly. Didn't expect to see you here. I needed to talk to you, I said, stepping into the room. Let me guess, he said, leaning back against the wall. You've made your decision. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I have. His expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Disappointment, relief. I couldn't. And I care about you, Oliver, I really do. But I can't do this anymore. Braden, he's the one I need to be with. For a moment he said nothing, his gaze fixed on the floor. Then he let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. I figured you're a better match for him anyway. Oliver, no, it's okay, he said, cutting me off. I get it, and for what it's worth, I hope it works out. He's a good guy. Tears stung my eyes as I stepped closer, unsure if he would let me. To my surprise, he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong but his grip gentle. Take care of him, he said quietly, and take care of yourself. As I left his room, my heart felt heavy but also lighter than it had in weeks. I had made my choice. Now all that was left was to see if Braden would let me fix what I had broken. It took me a full day to muster the courage to go back to Braden. I wasn't sure if he would hear me out or if I had already lost my chance, but as I stood outside his door, my heart pounding, I knew this was my only shot to make things right. When the door opened, he looked at me with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. Alex, he said, his voice soft. I've made my choice, Braden, I blurted out, my voice trembling. It's you. It's always been you. I was just too scared to admit it. His eyes widened, and for a moment I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Then he stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. Do you mean that, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. I can't imagine my life without you. Braden, you're everything I need. Without another word, he pulled me into his arm, holding me tightly as if he never wanted to let go. The weight of the past few weeks melted away in that embrace, replaced by a warmth I had only ever felt with him. I'm not perfect, I whispered, my voice muffled against his chest, but I promise I'll try to be better for us. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, his smile soft and full of love. You don't have to be perfect, Alex, you just have to be you. That night, as we sat together under the stars, his hand in mine, I realized that love wasn't about choosing the easy path, it was about choosing the right one. And for me, that was Braden. Love is never simple, and sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that matter the most. Have you ever faced a moment where your heart led you to a choice you couldn't ignore? Let me know in the comments below if this story touched you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another emotional journey. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's the only one you've got.